I'm Sarah Ivancho, and this is Laura James, and we're with BJC School Outreach and Youth Development. Today we'll be talking about resilience and how to build resilience and also what it is. Resilience is a shared experience in the lives of all human beings, and we'll learn a little more about it.
All right, so resilience really is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity. So bouncing back from difficult experiences in our lives, things like trauma or tragedy, other significant sources of stress. We can also learn resilience through everyday experiences that might also cause us to feel sad or lonely or helpless. So things like failing at a test or being left out, those help teach us resilience as well.
Resilience is a skill and it's also a mindset. It's the process where something difficult happens and we make it through. It's also known as grit, also known as perseverance, but it's the way that human beings just tend to scrape through an experience and then we get through it and we emerge on the other end sometimes stronger than before that experience. The acronym we'll use today is COPE. So we'll go through what each of those 4 letters means on the path to resilience.
All right, so we'll start with C, which is connection. As human beings, we're hardwired to want to connect with others, whether it's one person or a group of people. We don't necessarily need a huge circle of support. That might be ideal, but connection really means just finding at least one other person that truly deeply cares about us. So we can connect in all kinds of ways. We can start by plugging into the communities that we're already part of, so social circles or religious circles. Also giving back to the community by volunteering. That's another way to feel connected. We can start small with things like connecting with some other living things, so an animal or a plant. Gardening would kind of fall under that area as well.
The O is optimism. So when we're talking about resilience or going through difficult situations, optimism is not being happy all the time. It's also not being positive all the time. Optimism in terms of resilience is seeing things as they are, but no worse than they are. And so, for instance, if I would say, I'm having a really difficult day today, that's an optimistic statement in terms of resilience because we're being realistic about where we are. When we're going through something like stages of grief, it's okay to be realistic about what we're feeling today and what's happening today. And also knowing that we may not feel that way forever. That's optimism. And even when we're in situations that are not going to go away, what happens with people is that we tend to naturally move forward. And so with some time after the event, we tend to see things even in a slightly different perspective than we did when they first happened. Often we might even say that we built qualities that were stronger than before that event happened. For 20% of the world, this is natural. And for the other 80% of us, we have to work at it.
All right, so P is processing. Sometimes we really need to process things 3 or 4 times before we can move through them. Processing just means allowing ourselves that permission to express the entire range of emotions, especially as those emotions relate to some sort of trauma or other stressor in our lives. Stages of grief, allowing ourselves to move through those stages and experience them. This processing can give us insight and also help with decision making, kind of moving forward, and then also allows us to learn from our mistakes.
And the last is emotional self-care. And so emotional self-care really works in 2 ways. It's knowing when we need it and it's knowing how to use it. So when we find ourselves using a lot of statements like should, would, never, ought to, must, we know that we're in a really stressful time. And so we're probably not seeing things as realistically as we could. Emotional self-care is realizing when we need those things, but also doing some things for ourselves that will help. First is self-compassion, and that's different than self-pity. So self-pity is, poor me, I can't believe this happened to me. Self-compassion is, this is really hard, I wish this hadn't happened to me. But nobody likes it when that happens to them. And understanding that our experience is shared with a lot of other people who've gone through it before us, who are going through it now, and who are in some cases thriving, even because it's happening, or even though it's happening. So one of the really easy ways that we can practice emotional self-care is in the moment with mindfulness. I'm not great at doing this sitting down. I'm great at doing this moving. And so moving mindfulness works like this. I'm walking from one meeting to another, and what I do is I check in with myself. I take about 10 seconds to take 3 really deep breaths in and 3 deep breaths out, and I just notice, how are my shoulders? Are they tense right now, or could I relax them? Is my jaw tight, or could I relax it? I don't judge myself on it. I just give myself a moment to show compassion and reset, and then I move on.
Right, so we'll kind of finish up with this image you see here. Resilience is kind of like the process of a seed growing into something else. So when a seed's planted in the ground, it goes through a lot of changes, some of those really difficult to kind of reach the end result. So resilience really is growth through change. Another word we use for this in our department is emotional intelligence. We spend a lot of time talking with middle school students about this. So if you have questions or would like more information, feel free to give us a call. Thank you.
Thank you.